Revealed, how a lonely billionaire discovered an amazing woman, transforming her 5 lives forever. Jack Thornton stood on the balcony of his sprawling Silicon Valley mansion, an opulent prison cloaked in darkness. The golden lights of luxury cars shimmered below, yet his heart ached with a hollow resonance. His peers admired him for his success, yet Jack felt like a ghost among the living, haunted by a gnawing emptiness that swallowed him whole. Each networking event felt like a masquerade ball where he wore the mask of a confident mogul, but behind it lay a man weary of untruths, detached from the rhythm of authenticity. He inhaled the crisp night air, each breath tinged with unease. Success had become a gilded cage, locking him into a life defined by wealth but devoid of warmth. A clamor in his head rose like a tide, questioning his achievements. Was he truly happy? Or merely existing amid the noise of hollow accolades? A frantic thought intruded. Maybe, just maybe, he desired something deeper, something real. Days blurred into nights filled with sterile business meetings, each moment binding him tighter to his lavish isolation. Jack felt his heart race, plagued by contradictions. He feared the emptiness, yet the thought of vulnerability terrified him more. Hadn't he built this empire to shield himself from pain? Yet here he stood, repulsed by a life that felt more like a performance than a reality. What was the point of riches when they didn't anchor his spirit? He gripped the railing, knuckles white, a struggle within, a debate to break free from this charade. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The gala approached like a weighty specter, promising more of the same. Yet that evening, amidst the glittering crowd, he found himself drawn to an unexpected presence. Amelia Rivera, with her radiant energy and unfiltered honesty, began to chip away at his polished veneer. For the first time, Jack felt the thrill of genuine connection, a dance illuminated by her fierce spirit. Conversations flowed, unearthing layers of vulnerability he had long buried beneath layers of corporate jargon. As their laughter mingled, he glimpsed a world devoid of the facades that suffocated him. But a flicker of doubt ignited within him. What would this vibrant single mother get from a man like him? They belonged to different worlds, separated by invisible barriers. Yet, he couldn't shake Amelia's impact. She was a reminder of the beauty in simplicity, while he grappled with the reality of his entitlement. As their friendship deepened, Jack became acutely aware of the tension, the stakes rising higher with every shared moment. He witnessed Amelia's resilience with her 5 children, a force igniting something deep within him. But relics of her past began to claw at his heart. What would happen when her hidden legacy surfaced, the weight of expectations amplifying her struggle? Standing between the shimmering facade of his empire and the authenticity of Amelia's world, Jack felt the tension coiling tighter around him. Each passing moment brought with it a clearer vision of the choices ahead. Would he remain within the confines of his gilded cage or dare to step beyond its perimeters? Jack felt the pull of an emotion he hadn't known in years, a desperation to connect, tempered by a fear that the fractures of their lives would prove too large to bridge. His phone buzzed in his pocket, the glimmering light a reminder of the world waiting for him to choose. As he reached for it, uncertainty loomed over him like a storm cloud. Would he tear down the walls that had kept him protected yet isolated? The brink of decision shimmered tantalizingly close, the future of both their lives hanging in the balance. Jack stared at his phone, the illuminated screen a stark contrast to the dark thoughts swirling in his mind. Every notification felt like a mocking echo of his existence. The calls for meetings, the urgent emails, the demands of a life built solely on corporate achievements, none resonated with the man now standing at a potential turning point. As he hesitated, he wrestled with his fear of exposure. Did he truly possess the capacity to be vulnerable? A soft laugh crept into his memory, Amelia's laughter a sound so genuine that it sent ripples through his carefully fabricated world. He could almost hear the warmth in her voice as she spoke of her children, her dreams, revealing fragments of herself that shone like gems amidst the rubble of her struggles. Jack had always played the role of the invulnerable titan. What would she see if he stripped that facade away? The thought ignited a curiosity within him, urging him to embrace the unknown. Perhaps it was time to explore his own insecurities, to confront the demons lurking behind the polished veneer of wealth and status. He could feel excitement dance precariously with fear, the two emotions colliding within him. The prospect of fostering a genuine connection, of dismantling the barriers that separated them, echoed louder than the urgencies of his entrenched life. Each moment spent with Amelia had cracked open walls he thought were impenetrable. He envisioned her triumphs as a single mother, juggling her children's needs and aspirations, and the sheer force of her will left him in awe. Underneath her modest circumstances lay an indomitable spirit. What did he have to offer? Would his wealth become a weight that pulled them apart? Or could he find a way to channel his resources into something transformative? Suddenly, clarity struck like lightning. Instead of merely existing to protect himself from pain, he could redefine his purpose. He envisioned starting an initiative, one that would support single parents, providing mentorship, resources, and community. It would anchor the connection he felt toward Amelia and others like her, a chance to ignite their potential while simultaneously stepping into the transformative power of authenticity. As he made his way inside, his determination welled up, transforming the hushed doubts into a determined resolve. Jack realized he was not just a lonely billionaire, he could be a catalyst for change, capable of building connections that mattered. The thought of initiating such a venture thrilled him. But the deeper he delved into that idea, the more questions emerged. How would he bring this vision to life? Would Amelia support him, or would the very idea of vulnerability push her away? Back in the comfort of his home office, he grabbed a notebook and began to jot down ideas, each word fueling a newfound purpose. As he wrote, he felt an aliveness coursing through him, which had been absent for far too long. Yet, amid his inspiration, the door creaked open, and a shadow lingered at the threshold. Jack. A voice called his business partner, Dan, who stood with an incredulous expression. The air crackled with unspoken tension as the reality of Jack's other life crept back into focus. Would he have the courage to share his evolving vision, or would he retreat to the safety of silence? Jack felt the weight of his choices pressing down as he faced Dan, the very embodiment of the life he was reconsidering. "Are you ready for the meeting?" Dan's question hung heavy with expectation, challenging Jack's resolve to embrace the unknown. The moment of truth was here, and the path ahead remained shrouded in uncertainty. Jack's breath caught as he considered Dan's question, the familiar contours of the boardroom lurking just outside his door like a beast waiting to pounce. He felt a magnetic pull towards the world he was about to re-enter, one of financial forecasts, quarterly reports, and competitive strategies, but he was no longer convinced it was the one he desired. As Dan stepped into the room, his demeanor radiated a level of expectation that threatened to crush the nascent pride Jack was harnessing. The illusion of control he had wielded for years flickered like a faulty light bulb. "Yeah, let's get to it," Jack replied, his voice steadier than he felt. They walked towards the meeting room, the polished hallway reflecting the inner turmoil that churned within him. Each step echoed with the gravity of what he was leaving behind, not just professionally, but personally. Images of Amelia, her laughter, her strength, it was all wrapped around the idea of a purpose beyond profit. Settling into his seat at the table, Jack's mind raced. He looked around at the familiar faces of his colleagues, all impeccably presented, all on the same page of corporate ambition. Yet an insistent whisper surged from the depths of his consciousness: this wasn't who he wanted to be. How could he unleash the initiative he envisioned while adhering to the status quo? The meeting began, and Jack mechanically engaged in discussions about market shares and prospective mergers. But his focus strayed to the ideas he scribbled just moments before, ideas pulsating with relevance to both his life and Amelia's. What if he could turn this corporate endeavor into something that influenced real lives, that sparked genuine connections? A program designed not just for monetary gain but to empower parents like Amelia, who fought daily battles with resilience, yet, doubt slithered its way into his resolve. Would this vision matter in a room brimming with financiers and strategists? As Dan presented the agenda, Jack felt a prickly tension crawling over his skin. Was he merely a faceless figure in this corporate race, or could he assert his distinct voice? Finally, when the opportunity arose during a presentation break, Jack steeled himself and cleared his throat. Dan raised an eyebrow, sensing Jack's hesitation. "I've been thinking about something," he began, his hand gripping the edge of the table, anchoring him as vulnerability loomed like an intense storm. "What if we diversified our portfolio in a different direction? What if we explored an initiative focused on supporting single parents?" The room froze, silence enveloping them like thick fog. Eyes shifted, and Jack felt their collective scrutiny, his heart pounding as he awaited responses. What is motivating this sudden shift in focus? One of his colleagues asked, skepticism laced in their tone, and Jack could feel the defensive walls starting to build, his own insecurity pairing with their doubt. "An interest in making a genuine impact," he replied, fighting to maintain his footing. The tension swelled, each unvoiced thought a reminder of the man he had been versus the one he aspired to be. The discussion continued, but Jack noticed something crucial. The passion behind his words had ignited a flicker of hope among some. Perhaps this was what it meant to inspire, to connect under the guise of corporate facades. As the meeting dissolved into chatter, and the complexities of the company's financial landscape began to sink back into the forefront, a profound realization struck. He had broached a new path. With Amelia's influence fueling him, perhaps authenticity didn't have to be at odds with his corporate identity. With newfound clarity, he resolved to create a structured proposal that sought to bridge both worlds in a way that respected his entrepreneurial spirit while honoring the growth he longed to embody. Standing up from his chair, Jack felt buoyed by a conviction stronger than any fear, but facing the instilled skepticism of his peers proved daunting. What if they dismissed his goals entirely? The raw uncertainty sparked inside him. He was beginning to change, yet how fully could he embrace this shift without risking everything he had built? As doubts collided with determination, Jack braced for the next move. He needed to call Amelia, to share this vision, to delve deeper into his vulnerabilities with her. She had already inspired him, now, perhaps she could help him further navigate this bold new step that he needed to reconcile his emerging purpose with the life that Dan and the others emblemized. The path ahead remained fraught with trepidation, but the time had come to face not only his colleagues, but also himself. Jack leaned against the wall of his office, phone in hand, staring out the window. The city sprawled beneath him, shimmering with opportunity yet tainted by the weight of his apprehensions. His heartbeat thrummed in tandem with the indecision that gripped him. What if the next steps he took pulled him further from the veneer of success he had built? He dialed Amelia's number, the familiar ring amplifying the tension coiling in his stomach. When she answered, her voice was a balm against the chaos swarming in his mind. "Jack. How's everything going?" He hesitated, weighing his words carefully. It's complicated. I spoke up in a meeting today. I proposed an initiative aimed at supporting single parents. It felt right. His heart raced as he disclosed the audacity of his move, the prospect of authentic engagement thrilling yet terrifying. A pause. "That's amazing, Jack. I'm proud of you." Her enthusiasm ignited a small flame of hope within him, but he quickly doused it with self-doubt. "Yeah, but I'm already facing skepticism," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't want to be a laughingstock. I've fought hard to earn my place here." "What they're skeptical about is progress, Jack, not you," she responded firmly. "Lack of understanding fuels doubt. If you believe in this, pursue it. You can't let their fear stifle your vision." Sitting taller in his seat, Jack felt her conviction penetrating his uncertainty. This wasn't solely about corporate politics anymore, it was about a purpose bigger than himself, about fostering community support where it had been lacking. "How do I convince them?" he asked, his mind grappling with the logistics. "You craft your proposal with data, stories, and real-life implications. Show them the impact, Jack. Make it undeniable. Her pragmatic approach struck a chord. He had experienced countless boardroom arguments steeped in statistics and forecasts. What if he interwove those elements with narratives that humanized the issue? He wrapped the phone cord around his fingers, excitement clashing with the fear of rejection. I'll need real stories, real examples, to draw them in. Exactly. Don't just sell them numbers, show them lives. I can help you with that. I'll reach out to single parents in my network, she offered, her voice energetic with purpose. As they spoke, Jack's ideas began to crystallize. What if he orchestrated focus groups to gather stories? He could create a presentation that captured not merely the financial upsides but the raw, transformative experiences behind each life touched by their initiative. When they hung up, a tide of determination surged through Jack. He tore a fresh page from his notebook and began to outline his proposal. His mind raced, deploying all he had learned from years in the corporate crucible: the bottom lines, the KPIs, the strategies to engage stakeholders. But with each stroke of his pen, he infused a new life into them, narratives that could shift paradigms and enhance lives. Doubt lingered at the edges of his mind like an unwelcome guest, whispering warnings of failure. Yet, the gravity of his purpose began pulling him forward. As he finalized his outline, his phone vibrated. A quick glance revealed a message from Dan, stating a follow-up meeting for next week to discuss the future direction of upcoming projects. It felt like a sign, but also a challenge. Jack needed to prepare tirelessly if he aimed to present a proposal that would truly shake them out of complacency. He couldn't shy away from confronting their anticipated skepticism. It was time to channel his rising courage into a strategic execution of his vision, even as trepidation knotted in his stomach. What if Amelia's insight spurred him to unlock perspectives he'd never considered? What if their project not only transformed his path but reshaped how they viewed success altogether? As the hours slipped by, Jack didn't notice the creeping evening shadows growing across his office floor. He was engrossed, his fingers racing across the keyboard, piecing together not just a proposal, but a chance at authenticity in his professional life. Determined, Jack knew he had to face Dan and the board with something unprecedented. He had to unveil that resonant narrative, one capable of shifting their paradigms. But the real challenge awaited: could he withstand the pressure when it was time for him to defend everything he had crafted? With new resolve and the promise of change in the air, Jack felt the walls stirring around him. The moment of truth approached. Would he brave the tempest or shrink back into a corner? As dawn broke over the city, Jack gazed out, envisioning the transformation not just for others, but for himself. The time was nearing when he would confront the very foundations of his career and maybe even discover who he truly was in the process. Jack's phone buzzed again, jolting him back from his thoughts. It was a reply from Amelia with some contacts she had gathered, single parents whose stories he could potentially share during his proposal. The small jolt of excitement he felt quickly dissolved into apprehension. Would they be willing to share their lives and vulnerabilities with a corporation like his? Still, he knew he couldn't allow hesitation to cloud his vision. As the sun rose higher, illuminating his office with a golden hue, Jack felt that familiar cocktail of adrenaline and anxiety. He had less than a week to craft an engaging narrative that would bring his proposal to life. He decided to reach out to Amelia and set a time to brainstorm together. As he crafted the message, he recalled the group discussions they had during college about pivotal moments that sparked change in organizations. Authentic connection was often the most impactful influencer, and he needed to weave that thread within his presentation. Meeting with Amelia at their favorite cafe later that afternoon turned out to be invigorating. Surrounded by tables filled with people, Jack felt as if they were in their own world. They mapped out ideas on napkins, capturing the essence of what would resonate not only with the board but the heart of their company's mission. "Let us focus on the human stories first," Amelia suggested as she scribbled an approximation of a timeline for their project. "The numbers come later, they want proof, but the emotional pull can't be underestimated." "True, but they also need to see the hard facts. Investors want assurances, you know," Jack countered, head swimming with ideas but still tethered by the conviction that data would anchor the proposal. Of course, but if you don't hook them in the beginning, the numbers won't matter. You have to lead with vulnerability. Show them what real single parents face. You need them to feel something. Her words struck a chord within him. Would he risk exposing himself too? Jack sensed a flicker of something he had long buried, a fear of being vulnerable, of being rendered human in a world that adored its masks of success. Over the next 2 days, as Jack prepared for the meeting, he plunged into researching statistics, reaching out to the contacts Amelia had provided, trying to build rapport with the stories waiting to be told. Each interaction honed his resolve, but it also brought forth a new layer of discomfort. With every story shared, he was reminded of how far removed he felt from the everyday realities of many lives. One evening, while crafting a draft, Jack found himself reflecting on his own life, his inherited beliefs about success, and the pressure that had driven him thus far. Was he striving for something genuine, or merely a meticulously constructed facade? He decided to visit a local community center that offered resources to single parents. It was a world he had only observed from behind the polished walls of his office, and the vibrancy of real life outside his insulated bubble was at once enlightening and unsettling. Walking through the halls, he encountered earnest faces struggling yet full of resilience. Jack spoke with several parents, gathering stories that stirred his heart. He listened to their challenges, their triumphs, and the often hidden sacrifices they made. That was when the initial spark ignited further. Alongside the analytical data, he needed to convey the raw emotions intertwined with those facts. Yet as he began to weave these narratives into his proposal, Jack's internal conflict sharpened. Would these vulnerable glimpses suffice to pierce through the corporate skepticism? What if his presentation didn't land as intended, amplifying his fear of turning into a cautionary tale himself? Sitting at his desk late that night, surrounded by the amalgamation of stories and statistics, he felt a duality at work within him. The push for authenticity was at odds with the weight of professional expectations. Jack realized he stood at a crossroad, one path leading to measured restraint, the other towards boldness. As the clock ticked, he took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of his choice looming. Could he summon the courage to present himself alongside the narratives of others, blending his reality with theirs? The time for second-guessing was running out. The day of the proposal dawned ominously, and Jack's heart pounded as he stepped into the conference room. The eyes of the board members settled on him, waiting. But before he could even start, Dan cleared his throat and interrupted. "Before we begin, Jack, I have a few concerns I think we should address." A new wave of dread washed over Jack as the moment of truth shifted into a daunting confrontation. Would he be ready to defend his vision, or would he crumble under the mounting pressure? He steeled himself. Perhaps this was not just a proposal. Perhaps this was a reckoning. Jack's mind raced as he faced the board, Dan's pointed gaze slicing through him like cold steel. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as he fought against the instinct to retreat. This was a critical juncture not just for the proposal but for himself. How would he respond? Would he uphold the voice of those single parents he had grown to understand, or would he let the tide of corporate scrutiny drown him? "Let us hear your proposal first," Dan pressed, the challenge unmistakable. Though disrespectful, Jack recognized it as an opportunity to confront his fear. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. "Thank you for the time," he began, his voice shaky but growing steadier with each syllable. "Today, I want to share stories, real stories that humanize our statistics and illuminate the lives of single parents we often overlook." He held a carefully curated set of slides that blended interviews and data, but he knew the heart of his presentation lay in the words he chose next. "We pride ourselves on being a company that values family, yet we seldom acknowledge the struggles families face daily. I believe it's time we change that." He emphasized the importance of vulnerability, recalling Amelia's stirring ideas. Jack drew deep from the well of stories he had gathered. With each parent's journey, he illustrated a stark reality, detailing their sacrifices, victories, and dreams. "Every number we see represents a life," he said, eyes darting among the board members. "Behind the statistics are people. Parents who juggle multiple jobs, who miss milestones and find creative ways to make ends meet. Each anecdote he shared resonated deeper than mere facts. He painted vivid scenarios: the father who celebrated his child's birthday with homemade cake because store-bought was too lavish, the mother who transformed her living room into a makeshift classroom to help her daughter succeed academically. He spoke passionately, weaving his own surprise revelations about perspectives he never considered. The applause of empathy stirred slowly among the board members. He could feel it. He was reachable. But could he push further? As he transitioned to the data, Jack laid out compelling statistics, correlating the societal benefits of supporting single parents with company initiatives. Investing in these communities will generate loyalty, visibility, and ultimately drive profits. When we uplift others, we elevate our mission. Yet even amidst this surge of conviction, a sliver of self-doubt gnawed at him. Would the board truly embrace the emotional thread he had woven? Were they merely seeking cost-effectiveness over genuine connection? Dan interjected, his voice slicing through the moment. While your passion is commendable, how do we know these emotional appeals will yield measurable results? Jack felt the world tilt again. This was the moment. He blinked, grappling with thoughts of retreating back into the safe folds of logical analysis. But the stories of those parents flooded his mind. Each one screamed for recognition, for resolution. He took a breath and leaned in, feeling the weight of his own vulnerability. What if, instead of just focusing on data, we dedicated ourselves to a purpose larger than profit? What if we risked the emotional investment for a more profound return on relationships? Silence fell, the board's faces inscrutable. Jack sensed the stakes rising. He understood that the very act of laying bare his own hesitations, the fear of change, the potential for failure, echoed the fears of those he shared. It was not just a proposal for him, it was a metamorphosis that challenged the fabric of corporate values. The tension felt tangible, as if they were all holding their breath, waiting for either a breakthrough or failure. Jack's heart thudded painfully, but he felt an unexpected sense of clarity. Owning his vulnerability had shifted not just his perspective but energized his narrative. Suddenly, things felt unpredictable. He was at a critical threshold, ready to either embrace or forego a more profound connection. Would the board members see the merit in defying convention? As the silence pressed, his resolve solidified. He would not recede. He would confront this uncertainty. Then, just as Dan opened his mouth again, the door to the boardroom swung wide. An unexpected figure appeared, disrupting the fraught atmosphere and fueling a mix of curiosity and tension. I apologize for the interruption, but I think you will want to hear what I have to say. Jack's heart raced as all attention shifted. Who was this stranger, and how might this unforeseen entry alter the stakes of his presentation? Jack's mind wandered briefly, the unexpected entrant leveling the playing field. The figure remained obscured by the room's harsh fluorescent lighting, yet an air of confidence exuded from their stance. A curious mixture of dread and anticipation washed over Jack. This was a defining moment. Could this stranger provide an ally or merely shift the tides against him? The newcomer's gaze surveyed the board members, revealing a calm demeanor beneath the weight of the moment. You're discussing single parents and the real impact of your business practices. They turned slightly to Jack, their eyes bright with an eagerness that sparked something deep within him. You've put your heart out there, but I think you need to hear something even more powerful. Jack's breath hitched in his throat. The confidence that had begun to swell within him now wavered, nearly unraveling under the weight of this unexpected turn. What hidden truths could this stranger introduce? Would this deepen the connection he had begun to forge, or would it expose him further? I'm Robert, the newcomer introduced themselves, cutting through the gathered tension. And I have a unique perspective. With a slight smile, Robert stepped into the room, holding a sleek tablet that caught the light as they approached. Not only have I experienced the challenges of entrepreneurship myself, but I've also navigated the stormy waters of being raised by a single mother. Jack's heart shifted. Could Robert's experience align with his narrative? As he observed the board now leaning slowly forward, he realized he needed to reclaim the moment. You have my attention, Jack said, determined to steer this into a collaborative space rather than letting it derail his own initiative. Robert continued, their enthusiasm palpable. So many people overlook the resilience of single parents, yet they embody everything you're advocating for. My mother, she worked multiple jobs to ensure I could pursue my dreams. Those sacrifices shaped me as a leader and have pushed me to identify the ideals of empathy in business. Jack felt the familiar swell of purpose returning. He had been a conduit for other voices, but now he saw an ally joining him on the front lines. And how do you see that translating into measurable outcomes? Jack pressed, conscious of the board's skeptical eyes resting on them both. Let us encompass both feelings and numbers. Stories are just half of the equation, Robert replied, pulling up data alongside narratives of community impact that had woven through their life's experience. Here's what I found: when businesses genuinely connect with the challenges of single-parent families, not only do they build loyalty within communities, but they also consumer retention. The board members exchanged glances, recognizing the shift in focus. Jack's heart raced as he observed them lean in, engaged. This was no longer just his proposal alone. This was a rallying cry for a shared vision, amplified by an unlikely partnership. What's crucial, Robert added after queuing through a few more slides, is that you become an organization that stands on principles beyond the bottom line. It's about engaging, showing the world you care through committed practices. This could be an innovative approach, Jack. Jack felt both encouraged and electrified. Robert's presence transformed him, igniting a fiercer determination. He was no longer merely advocating for others, he was entering a collaborative arena, ready to reshape perspectives that seemed so entrenched. As Robert concluded, Jack took a deep breath, weighing the moment. Together, we could create a framework that not only emphasizes profits but also nurtures relationships and impact, he proposed, knowing a choice lay before him. A legacy of compassion can exist alongside a profitable model. Recognizing the weight of that statement, Jack glanced at Dan, who still wore an inscrutable expression, his authority challenged. This was not merely about a proposal anymore, it became a confrontation with established beliefs. Let's turn this into a strategy session. Then, Dan countered, lightning flashing through his eyes. Because if you think you can sway the board with emotional sentimentality alone, you might find yourself misguided. The unexpected ambush from Dan transitioned into an intense dialogue, with both Robert and Jack clearly aligned, forming a united front. As the board began plotting counterarguments, Jack knew this was a test not just of numbers but also of his newfound conviction. I'm ready to make the case that profit follows purpose, Jack declared, poised for battle, feeling an unfamiliar surge of confidence. There would be no retreat now that as the discussions heated, Jack caught Robert's eyes, sparking new strategies that formed like threads woven into a larger tapestry. But when a question about Robert's own controversial past emerged from a board member, doubt began creeping back into the room. Would their unity withstand further scrutiny? Jack's heart raced, already anticipating the impact of the onslaught set to follow. The boardroom crackled with tension as Jack felt the heat of scrutiny envelop them. Dan's pointed question about Robert's past hung in the air like a loaded gun, ready to fire at any moment. It was an unnerving reminder that vulnerability in business often came with a price. Could their nascent alliance withstand this sudden challenge, or would it fracture under the weight of doubt? Robert maintained composure, but Jack could sense the wave of anxiety ripple through him. He had seen that look before, the rapid mental calculations behind strong determination. It was time to act, passive waiting was no longer an option. Jack leaned forward in his seat, ready to defuse the situation and regain control of the narrative. We all have a past, Jack interjected, raising his voice slightly above the gathered murmurs, and it is those experiences that shape our character and propel us toward success. He shifted his gaze toward Robert, who appeared more at ease, empowered by Jack's defense. What truly matters is how we choose to use those lessons. Robert's perspective is a valuable asset not just for our company but for the families we serve. Dan's skeptical eyebrow arched, but Jack pressed on, driven by an urgent need to reshape the conversation. If we focus solely on the mistakes of our past, we risk losing opportunities for growth and understanding. Isn't it far more beneficial to envisage how those experiences can connect us with our target audience? Jack watched as some board members flicked their eyes back and forth, weighing his words while contemplating Dan's response. Maintaining the momentum was crucial. Any pause might allow the debate to tumble out of his grasp. How do you propose we frame that into a working strategy? Dan queried, narrowing his eyes as if searching for weaknesses in Jack's armor. Jack inhaled deeply, meeting Dan's challenge head-on. We craft a narrative that positions us as more than a corporation. Let us become advocates for those who feel overlooked. Our story could highlight not only Robert's journey but also the resilience of every family we aim to support. This is about connection, not only growth. A serious contemplation settled over the room. Jack felt the urgency ignite within him as he ventured further. Let us develop workshops and community engagement strategies that leverage insights from Robert's experiences. We could use storytelling sessions to transform the corporate image into one that resonates on a personal level. Robert's eyes glimmered with appreciation, and Jack felt fortified by their shared vision. They began detailing innovative ideas, community workshops, employing single parents, and using their stories as marketing touchpoints. Excitement surged through Jack as he observed the board warming to their concept. Jack decided to take it one step further. Let us not stop at workshops. We could launch a mentorship program, allowing our employees to connect with local single parents who have entrepreneurial aspirations. By doing this, we empower others while reinforcing our brand as an empathetic leader. In that moment, Jack recognized the pivot from presenting mere facts to creating an emotionally resonant framework. He felt himself transforming, no longer just a proponent but an architect of this vision. Each word spoken sharpened his focus, revealing hidden capabilities as a leader who could mobilize ideas with conviction. Then, the unexpected happened. A board member named Lisa, typically reserved, raised her hand. What happens if your plans aren't well received? What's the backup if Jack's heart raced as a bead of sweat formed at his brow? She was right, they needed a safety net. The air grew thick with fear of failure, as if all their momentum could collapse at any moment. Jack quickly realized this was his moment of reckoning, the kind of fundamental question that could either enhance or devastate their proposal. Failure isn't an endpoint, it's part of the learning curve, Jack replied, his voice steady, even if his pulse raced. Our adaptability, the ability to pivot and reassess, will be integral to our success and that of those we serve. The depths of conviction within him surged as he focused on the potential impact of their mission. Everyone in the room needed to feel that energy. We'll build a framework of evaluation. Regular check-ins and feedback loops will ensure we adapt, refine, and grow together. Emboldened by his own words, Jack glanced at Robert, who nodded in affirmation. As dialogue began to spark again, Jack's identity as a leader crystallized in that moment, an agent of change, driven by purpose. But would that resolve be enough to anchor their innovation against the looming tides of criticism and doubt? Jack's thoughts churned uneasily, even as hope kindled within him. The faint whispers of uncertainty resurfaced. The deeper question tugged at him: could he truly balance purpose with pragmatism and win this critical battle? As the conversation progressed, he sensed a turning point approaching, an opportunity that might either elevate them or threaten everything that in that pivotal moment. As he strategized how to advance forward amidst the clashing doubts, Jack knew with a jolt that the stakes had never been higher. The next move wasn't just a matter of whether they succeed today but a profound test of who he was meant to become tomorrow. The room was awakening from its contemplative hush, a newfound energy pulsating as Jack spoke. Their focus, once gripped by uncertainty, began shifting toward possibility. The chatter picked up, and Jack felt the moment slip back into his hands. The tension seemed to dissolve, yet he remained acutely aware of the ever-looming shadow of doubt that could resurface at any moment. As the board members engaged in discussions, Jack turned inward, contemplating the journey that brought him here. He wasn't merely an employee anymore. Elevated by this encounter, he was stepping into a leadership role that felt increasingly authentic. Yet with that power came an unsettling question: would his newfound ambition lead him to the success he craved or drown him in the pitfalls of overreach? Denise, another board member, leaned forward. How do we ensure that these workshops resonate? Community involvement is one thing, but we must connect with the families on a deeply personal level. We don't want to be seen as just another corporate entity trying to capitalize on a trend. Jack's heart raced again. Denise's question was fair yet daunting, haunting in its demand for comprehensive, nuanced understanding. The need for genuine connection echoed through him, inspiring both fear and determination. He rifled through his thoughts, recalling his father's mantra: real success is built on integrity and heart. Let us leverage technology, Jack proposed, emitting an urgency he felt growing within. A digital platform for ongoing conversations and feedback from our community can sustain a real dialogue. It's not just about initial workshops, it's about building relationships over time. We can invite families to share their stories directly with us, create a virtual space for connection. This idea settled in the air, its freshness lent power by a feel of vitality. A couple of board members nodded, sensing that this could potentially keep the energy of his proposal alive. Jack considered their expressions carefully, honing in on the flickers of appreciation, and reignited resolve surged within him. But would digital platforms truly yield meaningful engagement? Would this endeavor withstand the scrutiny of implementation? Questions flared in his mind, and he felt the need for a safety net tightening around his chest. Lisa's earlier query resurfaced, casting a long shadow over his enthusiasm. What if the platform fails to engage? What if our efforts are met with indifference? He had to confront his doubts head-on. By fostering transparency, we not only open ourselves to feedback but also cultivate trust. We'll regularly review our strategies based on community input. Should it fail, we adjust, pivot, and reframe. That's our commitment. There was a pause as his words settled, a balancing act between challenge and opportunity unfolding in the room. His voice grew steadier, fueled by the parallel between personal vulnerability and professional evolution. We won't shy away from addressing our shortcomings. The power of this initiative lies in our willingness to expose ourselves to the process, vulnerabilities, and all. In that moment, Jack was not just proposing a strategy, he was embodying the essence of leadership. He felt an unfamiliar warmth blossom, a sense of belonging that had eluded him in quieter times. Yet, lingering doubts haunted him. Still, was he truly ready for the potential backlash? As discussions continued, Jack's mind began racing again, mapping each outcome, the intricacies of human connection interwoven with business strategy. His ambitions surged to bridge these worlds, yet an unsettling realization crept in. Could this approach truly fulfill the gap between his purpose and projection? Was he risking too much of himself by playing this precarious game? His heart thudded, the stakes rising with each interaction. He could feel the board's gaze scrutinizing him anew, wondering if this was bravado or genuine insight that would lead their shared vision to fruition. With the air buzzing, he leaned forward, fully immersed in the unfolding conversation. The stakes were dual: to lead this initiative and to uncover his own capacity for influence. As an idea sparked about engaging stakeholders in a feedback loop, the weight of expectation pressed against him, the clarity of his vision at odds with the fear of potential failure. Could he navigate these treacherous waters without losing himself in the process? As Jack contemplated this next critical phase, he sensed the surfacing of a reality that could shatter or solidify his place within this arena. The next chapter awaited, whispered irrevocably, a test of his capability and vision, a chance to confront the doubts that lurked just out of sight. Jack Thornton stood at the precipice of transformation. The echoes of the boardroom lingered in his mind, a cacophony of skepticism and possibility. He had poured his heart out, intertwining his experiences with those of the single parents who inspired him. The blend of stories and data had ignited a palpable spark, but their potential acceptance shadowed it all with uncertainty. Would this be the moment he reclaimed his identity, or would it falter against the pressure of polished skepticism? The meeting's outcome remained uncertain, but Jack felt a surge of confidence swelling within him. No longer merely a lonely billionaire cloaked in doubt, he now stood as a catalyst for change. This newfound identity surged through him, compelling him to pursue his vision of supporting single parents with a fervor that transcended his previous corporate ambitions. With each passing day, the initiative began to take shape, bolstered by the groundwork laid in that pivotal boardroom. Jack grew steadfast, galvanized not just by a professional desire but by the emotional connection he had cultivated alongside Amelia. He embraced mentorship programs and community outreach that bridged business ethics with compassion. The logistical hurdles were daunting, yet every small success nourished his resolve. Engaging Robert further solidified the foundation. Their partnership resonated with authenticity, drawing from their shared experiences. Weeks later, Jack found himself sitting across from a gathering of engaged stakeholders in a bustling community center. This was no sterile corporate meeting, it was vibrant, alive with stories and perspectives he had once overlooked. As he emceed the workshop, he noticed the faces of the single parents in attendance, each etched with narratives of resilience. Fire ignited in his belly. He was no longer merely presenting facts but was facilitating a dialogue that mattered. "Your stories have the power to inspire change," he declared, the warmth in his voice resonating throughout the room. "We're here to listen, to grow with you." Through him flowed a connection grounded in authenticity, an element that had eluded him for so long, now cemented by purpose. Their tales, interwoven with data that Jack had painstakingly curated, reflected real struggles and victories. A forgotten birthday celebrated with handcrafted decorations, a child achieving academic success against all odds. He eloquently articulated how each shared experience was a reminder of the indomitable spirit within families they aimed to uplift. The outcome was undeniable. Parents began to engage deeply, sharing personal stories that illuminated their challenges. Jack listened actively, absorbing the weight of their words. Each narrative echoed the mission that had sparked this initiative, an initiative that was evolving into something larger than himself. He was building bridges rather than walls, a journey that affirmed his place in the world not as a lonely mogul but as a dedicated ally. As weeks morphed into months, the initiative flourished. When Jack returned to the boardroom, he brought more than just updates. He delivered a tangible shift in perception. The concepts of empathy and connections forged into strategies had led to increased community loyalty that reflected in their quarterly reports. Metrics soared, demonstrating how those vulnerable relations had transformed into a pathway for fiscal growth. The board, initially skeptical, began to embrace this recalibrated identity. Jack's authenticity disarmed their reservations. They now recognized that intrinsic value extended beyond profits. It created a legacy of compassion and purpose. "Jack, I must admit, this initiative has reshaped our perspective," Dan acknowledged, newfound respect glimmering in his eyes. Jack met those eyes with unshakable confidence. He had conquered his inner doubts and fears, transforming them into powerful drivers of change. Finally, standing on that same balcony of his sprawling mansion, among the shimmering lights that once felt like prison bars, Jack exhaled deeply. The weight of past burdens evaporating beneath a sky filled with genuine stars. He had achieved something profound, a bridge connecting his world of success with authentic purpose. Jack felt as though he had stepped into a new realm, one where wealth is defined not by solitude but by the shared joy and collective journey of uplifting others. This was not merely growth, this was transformation. Jack was no longer a lonely billionaire, he was a man grounded in purpose, proud of the legacy he was now forging. The clarity resonated within him, a profound fulfillment synthesized through vulnerability and connection, where he had proven to himself that true leadership flourished not through isolation but through engagement and empathy. As this chapter closed, he understood. Every barrier he had once feared to confront had evolved into his greatest asset. He had conquered the depths of loneliness and emerged with a vision that resonated louder than the hum of corporate expectation. This is the moment to support stories like Jack's. Subscribe immediately to witness more life-changing transformations. Don't wait even one more second, leave a like to fuel the algorithm and help others find this journey. Comment below with your own thoughts on Jack's incredible journey. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need this inspiration in their lives.